What would you do if the person that was responsible for your son's death came to your house to tell you that your son was in an accident? You don't know what's going on, but you do know that you've been trying to reach your son for some time and haven't been able to do so. So you call the hospital and you hear the horrible news that your son has just passed away, but that person is still there just sitting, watching you and your wife until he realizes that he's breaking his role of concerned friend. So he starts rocking back and forth saying, I can't believe he did this to me. This is exactly what happened to William and Mary Jane Jodry. Their son Thomas Jodry mysteriously passed away on September 14, 2019. The person responsible for his death is David Allen Knight. Thomas, or Tommy as his loved ones called him, was 21 years old. He was just starting his life and he was excited about his future. He did art and he also had a little cactus stand where he would sell cactus out of his house in Atascadero, a small city in San Luis Obispo County, California. Tommy met Knight August of 2019 when Knight bought a cactus from Tommy. Knight told Tommy that he had connections in the art world and he can help him get published. Knight texted Tommy repeatedly over the next few weeks. In those texts, Knight starts asking Tommy very personal questions, obviously trying to groom him. Tommy is 21, but he looks 18, and Knight was 57 at the time. Tommy finally agrees to meet Knight on September 14th to go see Architectural Graveyard at Cal Poly to go look at art and talk marketing. Knight picked up Tommy around 2 p.m. William met Knight briefly. Knight introduced himself to William and asked William if he was Tommy's dad, and he replied yes, and that was the last time William ever saw Tommy. Knight drove to Cal Poly, but the architectural graveyard was closed. Knight then took Tommy to grab lunch, and then they drove around to different places until they arrived to Frog and Peach Bar in San Luis Obispo downtown at 7:30 p.m. Knight opened a tab, and he told the bartenders to be very generous with the drinks. He said, give him as much as he wants. He is a very thirsty boy. In the bar video that William, Tommy's dad, was able to get, because the cops didn't get it, he had to go get it himself. You can see Knight constantly toasting Tommy, encouraging him to keep drinking. You can also see Knight switching his full drinks with Tommy's empty glasses many times when Tommy wasn't looking. At 8:45 p.m., the bartenders cut them off because Tommy was slurring his words, and by that time, Knight hadn't drank anything at all. The bill totaled to around $100, and Tommy's alcohol level was 0.38. Knight started getting very handsy with Tommy, even pulling his head towards his crotch. Tommy was upset at this behavior, so he left and started walking the opposite direction of Knight's car. Thomas was actively trying to get away from Knight, but Knight was after him. Tommy crossed the street to get away from him. That's when he fell and he hit his head, losing consciousness. A young woman who had been following them called 911. Knight made no attempt to call for help or call 911. The 911 operator asked if Tommy was a transient, and she never sent an ambulance, she just sent a police car. By the time the patrol car had already gotten them, Knight had already shaken Tommy awake, and the patrol car just drove by, didn't stop and check on Tommy at all. So after Tommy regained consciousness, he freaked out every time Knight tried to touch him, and he kept trying to get away from him, but Knight kept following him. Somewhere along the way, Tommy dropped his phone and Knight put it in his pocket. As Tommy was trying to get away, he would scream, help me, someone is after me. And he kept falling a few more times. Tommy ran to the parking structure where a few people saw him go up the parking structure, actively trying to get away from Knight. At around 9:15 p.m., someone called 911 saying that someone had fallen from the parking structure, and the operator finally sent an ambulance. While an officer was attending Tommy, Knight approached him and asked him what happened. Knight told the officer, I know him, his name is Tommy, but I don't want to be on record that I know him. Knight proceeded to tell the officer Tommy's full name and the city that he lived in. Knight tried to tell the police that Tommy was hit by a car, but the police told them that he had fallen off the parking structure. He walked away. Once the ambulance arrived, he texted Tommy, Thomas, where are you? But of course, he still had Tommy's cell phone in his pocket. Knight told passerbyers that Tommy was hit by a car. Tommy was transported by ambulance to Sierra Vista Hospital, and he was pronounced dead at 9:49 p.m. At 10:20, Knight arrived at the door. William asked him, where is Tommy? I've been trying to call him. Knight handed William Tommy's phone, telling him that he found it on the ground. And then Knight told him that he had lost Tommy somewhere around the downtown area, but he heard police sirens, and then he saw someone on the ground that looked like Tommy, but the police wouldn't give him any information. William called Sierra Vista Hospital, where he got the news that Tommy had passed away. After that, he asked Knight to leave, but to come back the next day to tell him what happened. But he never returned or called them ever again. The police department didn't do their job from day one, and Knight hasn't been prosecuted. David Allen Knight is a felony convicted child essayer. He has criminal record of essaying minors in 1987, 1997, and 2003. The cases have been expunged and no longer available to the public. Knight's intentions with Tommy's were obvious. Tommy's parents are asking the public for help. The San Luis Obispo Police Department reopened Thomas's case last year, and the new detective recommended for Knight to be charged with involuntary manslaughter, but it's past the statute of limitations for 3 months. And the DA refuses to ask the judge for an appeal because their case is not strong enough. The state attorney general is looking into this case. Tommy's parents are also asking anyone that has been an essay victim of David Allen Knight to please reach out to them, because having proof of his history of abuse will help with the reversal of statute of limitation. Thank you for listening, and let's help William and Mary Jane Jodry get justice for their son Tommy.